Good evening. I would like to call the order to the January 22nd Little Rock Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those in attendance as well as those watching at home. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Webb, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Campuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Wyrick, Mayor Scott.
Here. Mr. Carpenter, would you please give our invocation?
Please join me. We come tonight to listen. We come tonight to discuss. We come tonight perhaps to debate or even to argue. But we come tonight because of a city we love and the citizens we wish to care for and from whom we need to hear. Amen.
Amen. Please stand and join me in Pledge Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now hear an update from the city's Bicycle-Friendly Community Committee. And I would like for Mrs. Director Peck to handle that for us as well.
Thank you. Mayor Scott, Vice Mayor Wyrick, members of the City Board. My name is Ken Gould, and I'm a member of the City of Little Rock Bicycle Friendly Community Committee. Having served beginning in 2006 as the first chair of the committee, the committee was created in 2006 pursuant to your resolution, a resolution of the City Board. Part of that resolution called for the committee to make regular updates to the board of its work. It's been quite a while since we've done that. We're trying to take that responsibility more seriously, so tonight will be our first update, and we look forward in the future to giving you additional updates on the work of the committee. It's going to be a two-person presentation. We're going to be brief. And so, Mason?
Yeah. Well, my name is Mason Ellis. I am the current secretary for the Little Rock Bicycle Friendly Community Committee.
We'll take a few minutes just to update you on the work of the committee, the past, present, and the future, and why the work of the Bicycle Friendly Community Committee is vital to the city of Little Rock. The membership of the committee is composed of public members, city staff members, particularly the Director of Public Works and the Director of Planning, and advisory committee members. We've been very fortunate over the years since 2006 to have among the public members of the committee some of the leading citizens of Little Rock, although their names aren't typically associated with bicycling interests. For instance, former Mayor Jim Daly, now Congressman French Hill, Attorney Jess Askew, commercial real estate developer Hank Kelly, property developer and businessman Gene Pfeiffer, and architect Ed Levy, among others. They have all served as members of the committee. Some of them have rotated off to advisory status now. And Ed Levy succeeded me as the second chair of the committee and only recently retired himself as chair of the committee to advisory committee status. The committee is also composed of representatives from the diverse scope of bicycling interest in the city of Little Rock. The goal of the committee since 2006 has been to respond to the charge in that 2006 board resolution that created the committee, that Little Rock become a bicycle-friendly community city, both in fact and as recognized by the League of American Bicyclists in Washington, D.C. And I'm pleased to report that in 2016, the League of American Bicyclists recognized Little Rock as a bronze-level bicycle-friendly community city. That's a status that is highly coveted among cities around the country and has been used to great advantage by those those cities that have achieved it. Since 2006, the members of the committee and the committee itself have also made substantial contribution to other developments that have benefited the city of Little Rock. A few examples: the Arkansas River Trail, the count them five, pedestrian bicycle bridges that cross the Arkansas River, and one to the west that crosses the Little Maumelle River. And those include, of course, the Big Dam Bridge, which, if you're not aware, is the longest bicycle pedestrian bridge built for that purpose in the country and perhaps in the world. In addition, the committee is developing a trail and street transportation network to connect routes that would service the rapidly increasing interest of people using a bicycle to commute to work and to commute to business, including shopping. The committee has, all through the committee's efforts, the city of Little Rock has created a full-time, and you probably know this, bicycle pedestrian coordinator position, and has adopted a complete streets ordinance that mandates that all transportation interests, bicyclists, pedestrians, motor vehiclists, be accommodated or at least considered when the city enters into street projects. In its work, the overriding objective of the committee has not been to serve the interest of the people you see on the expensive bicycles with the expensive clothing. Rather, we want to service the interest of everyone else, bicyclists whose primary goal is to safely ride their bicycles for exercise and fitness, for transportation, and to benefit the environment.
Moving forward, in 2019, our committee is committed to improving cycling in Little Rock. As Ken noted, in 2016, Little Rock was awarded a bronze status as a bicycle-friendly city. We aim not only to keep that status because it gets renewed regularly, but also look at ways that we can bump that up to our next goal, our silver status. We're also working with the city public works and park and recreation departments to look for opportunities to connect our existing bicycling infrastructure and to create a seamless system to expand across the entire city, so that getting anywhere in Little Rock by bike is not only possible, but also a viable means to transportation or an alternate to driving. The LRBFCC is working to improve the implementation of the 2015 Complete Streets Ordinance to ensure that all our streets, whether new construction or repaired and upgraded, are safe for all users, whether they're on foot or bike, traveling by car, by public transit, and that they serve the people who move on those streets as well as the people who live and work on those streets. But perhaps our biggest hurdle we have been working on for years is finally closing the loop on the Arkansas River Trail. Currently, visitors to Little Rock who wish to ride the Arkansas River Trail are directed by locals and businesses over to the North Little Rock side because of the big missing section in our section on the South Shore here that is just dangerous to ride for visitors and for people who are not familiar with it. The city's Public Works and Parks and Recreation departments have made some major strides recently in piecing together this missing section. But the piece in front of the Dillard's headquarters building still remains a major obstacle in completing the Arkansas River Trail system. All of these items are important to us for multiple reasons: improving quality of life, encouraging healthy lifestyles, attracting new talent to Little Rock, and encouraging new developments as well as redevelopments of existing neighborhoods. Arguably, though, the biggest reason for improving cycling in Little Rock is the economic benefits it can bring. You don't have to look far to see examples of how cycling can positively impact a city. In Northwest Arkansas, a recent study funded by the Walton Foundation found that the Razorback Greenway Trail, running for nearly 40 miles from Fayetteville to Bella Vista, brought an estimated $137 million in economic benefits to the region in 2017 alone. That figure includes $51 million in economic activity and $86 million in health benefits. To our east, Memphis has seen a cycling boom as well, which has led to an increased amount of redevelopment centered around that city's expansive bikes and trail system. Even here in Little Rock, the economic impact of the annual Big Dam Bridge 100 bicycle ride alone is estimated by the Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau to be around $1 million for that one event, not to mention the thousands of tourists who travel to Little Rock annually and ride on our trail system. In the 2015 Economic Impact Study for the future Southwest Trail to connect downtown Little Rock to downtown Hot Springs is estimated to have a $13.7 million increase in total property values and 65,000 new visitors to that region, injecting $3 million into the local economy. All that to say, investing in cycling is good business, and the LRB FCC is here to help.
The economic and quality of life benefits that have come to Little Rock as a result of developing cycling amenities can be summed up in that old credit card TV advertisement, priceless. And we thank you very much for your time and attention, and we look forward to appearing before you in the future with additional updates. Thank you.
Director Peck?
Thanks, Ken and Mason, for the long overdue report. And for those of you, even if you're not a cyclist, I hope that this makes you more aware of the economic impact of the growing bicycle tourism. It's immense, and we truly have a jewel with the River Trail, with the Southwest Trail. There's so much potential here, and we love it when people come to visit and we get those temporary taxpayers, heads and beds and butts and seats. Right, Jean? So thanks for the long overdue support, and thank you all for your work.
Well, thank you again for that great presentation. We'll continue on with the agenda. There's been a request made by the applicant to defer item number 9 until a later date.
So moved.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we defer item 9. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passed. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a motion to approve the minutes of the November 20th, 2018 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting, a resolution to accept title to property donated to the City of Little Rock, Arkansas by quitclaim deed to be utilized for neighborhood revitalization programs and for other purposes, a resolution to accept title to property donated to the City of Little Rock, Arkansas by quitclaim deed to be utilized for neighborhood revitalization programs and for other purposes, a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Mark McClarty Ford in the amount of $67,271 for the purchase of one Ford F-750 truck for the Public Works Department and for other purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Baldwin and Shell Construction Company in an amount not to exceed $3,353,944 plus contingencies to provide general contractor services for the construction of Fire Station Number 24 to be built at 8801 Stagecoach Road and for the purposes. A resolution amends Section 1 of Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution Number 14,674 of November 21st, 2017 to increase the square footage of Fire Station Number 24 and to increase the architectural fees accordingly and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the mayor to enter into a contract with F&D Ranch for the purchase of approximately 100 acres of land to be used by the Little Rock Port Authority for the purpose of relocating the VorCon VOR cone and for other purposes. A resolution authorized the mayor to enter into a contract with the Qualified Nation for the purchase of approximately 77.5 acres of land and to acquire an option for an additional 77.5 acres of land for use by the Little Rock Port Authority and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the mayor to enter into a contract with Multi-Management Services Incorporated for the purchase of approximately 2 acres of land located at 6800 Lindsay Road for use by the Little Rock Port Authority and for the purposes. A resolution to make mayoral and board of director liaison member appointments to represent the City of Little Rock boards and commissions and for other purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Sorry about that, Director Hendricks.
On Resolution 2 and 3, and I may ask Mr. Moore, is there a debt owed by either one of these property owners, such as weed cutting, anything like that?
Let me ask Mr. Garland to come forward.
Sometimes we're left with that kind of debt.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Director Hendricks, to my knowledge, there is no debt owed on these parcels.
You sure?
I will never stand here and tell you for sure. I'll certainly double check, but as far as I know.
I mean,
Okay, thank you, because I was really concerned.
in the write-up, I do note that all the taxes have been paid.
Okay, thank you.
Usually donations.
Don.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Do we have a second motion to do the second reading? First reading, I'm sorry.
On the grouped items.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you please read items 12 through 15?
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Lot 10, Northwest Territory, revised short form PCD, located at the northeast corner of Cantrell Road and Chenal Parkway, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned office district titled Fulmer, short form PDO, located at 102 Barton Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled 800 Town Oaks, short form PDC, located at 800 Town Oaks Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with WatchGuard Video for a total amount of $68,525 for an annual maintenance contract for the Little Rock Police Department, and for the purposes, first reading.
Motion to suspend the rules and move the ordinances to second reading. It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
She made the motion. Director Wright made the motion. I need a second.
Madam Clerk, second reading, please.
I need a second. Second. Okay. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned commercial district titled Lot 10, Northwest Territory, revised short form PCD, located at the northeast corner of Cantrell Road and Chenal Parkway. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned office district titled Fulmer, short form PDO, located at 102 Barton Street. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned commercial district titled 800 Town Oaks, short form PDC, located at 800 Town Oaks Drive. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with WatchGuard Video for a total amount of $68,525 for an annual maintenance contract for the Little Rock Police Department, second reading.
Motion to suspend the rules and move the ordinances to a third reading.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and probably second. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Madam Clerk, third reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned commercial district titled Lot 10, Northwest Territory, revised short form PCD, located at the northeast corner of Cantrell Road and Chenal Parkway. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned office district titled Fulmer, short form PDO, located at 102 Barton Street. An ordinance to approve a planned zoning development and establish a planned commercial district titled 800 Town Oaks, short form PDC, located at 800 Town Oaks Drive. An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with WatchGuard Video for the total amount of $68,525 for an annual maintenance contract for the Little Rock Police Department, third and final reading.
We've had three readings of the ordinances. Are there any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. I'm going to now open the public hearing. Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution for item number 16?
A resolution to grant a conditional use permit to allow subdivision management office community building on the R2 single-family district zone property within the Valley Springs Cottages subdivision located at the southwest corner of Geyer Springs Road and Valley Drive in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes.
I believe we have two agenda cards to speak against. Mr. Leroy Glens, could you please approach the podium, please?
Good evening to the board, Mayor. My concern with the new building was it was going to present more of a problem that we're already having that we can see that's visible now. During the last two rains it had, we had flooding, land erosion, and I'm concerned about that even more. My property is at the very end of the building where the building is, and I have pictures I took the last time it rained, and you can see the flood, how it flooded the yard, even up to my back steps. And I was told that the company would do something about that, but it's going to be on a pad, and that water has to go somewhere. And as long as it keeps coming down into the yard, there's going to be land erosion there, and we're going to have a problem with it. And I do have the pictures if someone would care to see them.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Hendricks. Sir, we'll now have a question from Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Right here. Here. How are you tonight?
I'm well, thank you.
I have a question. What is your address?
Number 57, Saxony Circle.
Saxony Circle. Okay, 57 Saxony Circle. Okay. That's all I have for right now. I'd like to hear the other person that wants to speak, and then I've got a series of questions for the applicant.
Thank you. Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick question. Your concerns about the, right here,
Yes.
about the drainage.
Yes.
The proposed improvements with the development, you're saying they won't address the issues with the drainage or the flooding or the...
Well, it was said that they would address the issue about the water, the runoff, but I see as the more it rains, and I see how contentious this is going to be because you're going to have a bigger problem. And now you're talking about raising another pad, and the water's got to go somewhere. Now, the drainage will catch the water that comes into the facility, but it won't do anything about the water that's running over the drain. And it runs right over the drain into my backyard. Well, into the backyards of the neighborhood there, not just necessarily mine, but those are some of the pictures there.
So you're saying that the proposed development, the improvements that they're suggesting they're going to make won't be sufficient to address your concern?
So.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Glenns? Director Wright?
So there's a subdivision, a new subdivision going in there. Am I correct?
Yes.
So this is just a building, them putting a building there for the use by this new community that's going in there.
Well, the whole area is going to be the cottages there, but I'm saying it stops. It starts from Guyer Springs and it goes like toward Valley, and it stops at the very end of it is at my house.
Okay.
And so that's
I'm looking
where
at the picture and I'm trying to and I see where Saxony Circle is. Well, I did until he moved it. And I was, yeah. And I'm trying to see. Oh, okay. Okay, so is the development going in on the other side of the fence, and this is your backyard?
yes.
Ooh. Well, it seems to me not just that building, the subdivision would.
Well, it's going to be a problem. Not only that, but you know, that was trees and you had a nice view. But now I walk out, the only thing I'm looking at is the back of a concrete building. So it's taken away all of the beauty of the property there.
Mayor, may I ask a question of Mr. Moore and staff?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moore, has your staff looked at this and determined if there are any trees or anything that needs to be put in as a buffer between his subdivision and the new subdivision?
Director Wright, we have, and I'm going to ask Mr. Collins and then maybe tag team with Mr. Honeywell also. Jamie.
Director Wright, this is a residential development abutting a residential development. And so it was a straight zoning. So it wasn't a planned development, so no buffers are required when two adjoining zonings are the same.
So what about the drainage issue?
Well, the drainage issue, the subdivision went through as a standard plat, which when it went through was a zero lot line subdivision, and it went to the planning commission, but it is a Richardson case for the Supreme Court, which means that if the plat met all requirements and there was no variance requested, then it is approved. And then after approval, then they go through the development process of designing the subdivision per our adopted codes and ordinances and drainage manuals in which have done that. And so they've met the requirements for the plat and also the drainage. The drainage that he's talking about is, if you look on the map, you'll see a blue line that runs through some of the red hatched area, and it's flowing back towards Geyer Springs. That area through there is low, and it does hold some runoff. It is not, however, mapped in a 100-year floodplain mapping, per FEMA. But we have requested that they run the drainage analysis and finished floors be set based upon that elevation, for a 100-year storm. But it is not a mapped floodplain right now.
So is this request by your department in their requirements as they build this subdivision, or is this?
Yes.
So this is something that they have to do?
Yes, they have to provide the drainage and the tension per ordinance. And so on that 100-year, they ran the 100-year storm through the channel for design to see how high the water level came, because it goes underneath Geyer, so that we know what we need to set the finished floor at, for the elevations of the buildings through there. This application is the little dark area that's outlined in there that's inside the subdivision that was approved. So it is changing the overlying zoning, the conditional use of a lot that was approved to allow the use of that lot for a sales office and also community gathering building for the subdivision. Now, from a drainage aspect of it, the amount that would be added, whether a house would be there as opposed to what this is going to be there, is going to be the same, essentially. I mean, it is, the parking in the front, people can add also, patios in the back for the same scenario. So this is not seen as an increase in the drainage that's going through there. Now, the person just spoke's concern about, the Saxony Circle drainage. That's some of the drainage that's coming on Saxony. In general, the drainage that flows from Saxony back all the way towards Geyer. It gets down to that low spot, the channel that I pointed out through there, and flows back towards Geyer Springs. Now, this is a low area, so there is water that's standing. Now, I'll have to let Mr. Honeywell speak more for the drainage plans that come in, but from what that we had seen previously, there was drainage swales adjacent to the development to the north, the subdivisions that do gather some of that and take it away. Now, has it taken any of that drainage away that is on those developments to the north? No, there's no grading that's going on in the Saxony area. It is only contained inside the subdivision area.
So, in your opinion, this building is not making an impact because the subdivision is going in anyway, and they've met all the requirements of our ordinance?
Yes, that is correct, Director Wright. The impact is already there. The impact is the subdivision that was approved. This is just a change in use of what that impact is for one lot.
And the subdivision meets zoning, existing zoning?
Yes, ma'am.
So that could not be denied?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Director Hendricks.
Have you had an instance similar to this that did pass, maybe not here, but Ready? Can you share with us another instance where this type situation has occurred and it was approved?
There is several subdivisions throughout the city that has I guess, a community area where people congregate. Several of those were approved as part of a planned development that come through. So the board has seen that, but it's part of a planned development. Some of those, Otter Creek is one of those that has a recreational area, community area that was approved. Also, just out more of the, out west subdivisions, most of them, when they come in, they get larger, they do provide some of those amenities for the area. In this area, there hasn't been one locally in this area approved like that for the use of a communal area within the subdivision, because these are older ones that's been there for a while. A lot of those was put in the newer subdivisions that were going in.
But you feel comfortable with this?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, this is, like I said, this is just a change in use. The reason that we're staff supported this at the Planning Commission was the fact that they are allowed for a number of years, 3 years, to have a lease office or sales office for any subdivision. Can do so. So if a developer comes in and is building homes, they can build a home for somebody to see, a spec home, and also use it as a sales office for so many years. Really what we're looking at is the change of the conditional use to allow them to keep it permanently, forever, the use of a leasing office, and then also for a community,
Thank you. I support staff.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Jamie, one more time. Now, the last couple of comments you made, you referenced change in use about 3 times. Now, is this a different use that was denied at first? They're appealing a denial, correct?
That's correct.
And did staff support the original use? Is this different than what was denied at first? Because this last Planning Commission meeting, I think we had 5 absent, 5 yeas and 1 nay. So is this different than what was denied at first that they're appealing?
No, it's
the
same. The same, Director Richardson. What it is, it's a conditional use. Think of it like the underlying zoning is still the residential zoning. It's just a special conditional use that's put on it that allows them to use that for what was prescribed, which was the lease office and then the community, office or community shared building. And the reason that the vote had is you have to have a 6-4 vote to pass it. And there was several commissioners that were absent on the vote. So 5 voted for it and 1 voted against. So it did not get the 6.
So Tom, are we okay legally that we only had 5 instead of 6?
You're okay in terms of the issue before you tonight.
Okay. And Jamie, do you know if staff was supportive of the original denial? You may not have this in your notes or in your memory, but it was denied before. Was staff in support of it during that planning meeting, during that process?
We were supportive of the change and for approval of the conditional use permit.
So your point was in opposition of what the Planning Commission recommended or didn't recommend?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Jamie.
Any more questions from Mr. Glenn's? Seeing none, we have another card from Mr. Tony Miller. Good evening, Mr. Miller.
Afternoon, Mayor Frank Scott and City Directors. Can
you put your mic down, sir?
It's been a little difficult to kind of get a good understanding of what's been going on and what's been said at different times. Try to group this up. When we first had a meeting in the Neighborhood Association, it was said that it was possibly going to be roughly 70, 72 homes that were going to be built. And we had a problem with that, knowing about the drainage system. It floods in my backyard also. I'm right next door to Mr. Lee. And it was told that it would not be a problem. My question is, it seems that we've gotten notices at short periods of time. The first notice that I got, it was already approved for them to start building on that property. And when I came here to speak, it was already, everything was already in motion. So I was really just here just in presence. It didn't make a difference. It makes us feel somewhat unimportant because we didn't have a say-so. And from what I understand, I think I moved in this area in Allendale roughly in the 80s. But there was a company that came out once before and tried to build on this property, and it didn't get passed because of the drainage system or lack thereof. And why is it okay now? We're so much confusion because the last meeting that we had for the neighborhood association, it was definitely mentioned that it was zoned R2. Okay. Google says, you know, this is a single family residence. It could be considered as a duplex. So that's different from what it was stated before. Okay, so we're faced with the fact that now may be a new group of tenants that are not concerned about the property, just a place to live. So is it all about important tax dollars and not so much important about us being flooded out? Because at this time, I don't have to pay the flood insurance. I'm afraid I may have to, and I wouldn't think it's fair if I do have to.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Vice Mayor Wire, I believe, has a question for you, Mr. Miller.
I'm okay with Mr. Miller. I'd like for Bruce, if Mr. Honeywell can come talk to us about the drainage issue.
We ask our Public Works Director, Mr. Honeywell, to come forward, John.
Mr. Honeywell, you and I have talked about this subdivision going in a while back when it was first going before the Planning Commission. And it's my understanding that before they could build a permit to build the houses, that they had to do a hydraulic study, or at some point in time they had to do a hydraulic study. And there are a number of detention ponds that are there. So if you could explain to the folks here what the hydraulic study, what the status of it is, and then also the detention ponds and what impact that might have on the drainage, I would appreciate it.
Sure. As part of this development's approval, the developer is required to study how the stormwater is going to move across the property. They are required to do detention as part of the development. And what detention is referring to is they cannot increase the runoff that is leaving their site prior to what it was before they do the development. The pre-existing conditions need to match the post-development conditions as far as stormwater runoff is concerned. They are doing that through a series of detention ponds that will hold any increased runoff from impervious structures, pavement, homes, driveways, etc. They've done that, and as part of that, they've come up with the channel that's actually going to replace, or the blue line that you can see on the map up there is roughly where water used to flow across the undeveloped property. They are going to create a channel that works through the subdivision that will convey that water from west to east towards Geyer Springs. So the conditions pre-existing to post should not be different from those that are surrounding it, especially upstream.
So it's my understanding after our conversation before and tonight, they will do detention ponds to take care of the increase in water flow that they have from this development. But as far as the overall drainage that goes through there, it will still be as high or as low as it always was.
Yes, ma'am.
Based on based on the work that they're doing. Okay. What about the hydraulic study that they were supposed to do? What's the status on that?
Well, that's part of their design of how they're going to do the detention and everything else. That's what determines those kind of calculations, is the study that they do of how the water's moving across their property.
Okay, so they performed the study and they've given it to you, and the staff is okay with what they provided to you?
That's my understanding, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is it true that close to this location, we do have some property that's in the 100-year floodplain, but this area has never been studied?
That is correct. I believe it's to the east of here, east of Geyer Springs is where we have properties that there is an existing floodway that's mapped by FEMA. This particular reach of that drainage has not been formally studied, and base flood elevations have not been established for that area. But as part of what Mr. Collins talked about earlier, where we wanted to establish finished floor elevations for the homes that are being built, we have them do that to the 100-year storm elevation, so we don't have homes that are going to be built new that could potentially be flooded.
Which is a
on this
concern.
property.
So you've seen the study that they're going to do on that as far as the height of the foundations for the homes, and that's acceptable?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So they're doing this prior to doing a 100-year flood study or a flood study at all. And so how do we know that what they're doing is appropriate?
We can determine what that elevation of the water is going to be. It's just not done in a formal FEMA flood insurance rate map method.
Okay.
As far as acceptable for them to establish a method for people to be required to buy flood insurance. We can calculate what the level of the water would be without doing it necessarily through the way FEMA would want it for establishing those kind of.
So the two families that spoke tonight were at, excuse me, 57 and 59 Saxony, which is north of this site.
Yes, ma'am.
Has any of that area been studied for floodplain?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. I think that's all my questions for Mr. Honeywell. If the developer's here, I'd like to ask him, unless someone else has got questions.
Let's let Director Hines, then Director Richardson.
Thank you. So, John, as I was looking at the pictures that the folks from Saxony brought, it looked to me as if Saxony Circle's at a higher elevation than the question property. Is that correct? I don't have a contour map. I don't know if Jamie can confirm.
I haven't looked at those photos, but I believe they are upstream of this development. So.
Okay, so right now, is it possible for this property to be backing up water on the folks in Saxony Circle? I saw a silt fence that looks like it was installed to control erosion on the property that could be holding water back.
I haven't been out there to actually look at the condition that exists today, so
okay.
I can't really speak to that. But
Jamie,
we can look
you
at that, certainly.
confirm the elevation?
Yes, Director Hines, even if you go look at the contour maps on there, when we went out there and looked at it, there are areas that is adjacent to the Saxony Circle area that, as it was running off, it was hitting trees, shrubbery, and it's not like a hilly situation where it's 10 foot of relief away from that area in that subdivision. As you are leaving and going south onto the property, there are areas that for short distances within 10 feet or so of that property line may go up a little bit, but then it also may go down a little bit. So you do have areas that water was standing from where the development was just to the north and when it was traveling to the south. And that's mainly because of the change in the roughness or the runoff coefficient from a subdivision type to a forest or tree type. That tends to slow it down a little bit. And also, just like, you've seen the photos, and I looked at them when I handed them back. As you get close to those subdivisions, the homes that are right there abutting it, you are going to get small areas that don't show up in some of those contour maps that do hold water. Because those are only in either, 10 or 5 foot intervals. They will not show down to the 1 foot.
Do we have any reports of any houses on Saxony having water get actually into the house? I know people get uncomfortable when they have water in their yard. We deal with it a lot in Ward 5 that side yards and backyards are meant to shield water and shed water from your property. So have we had any reports of any water in houses, or has it just been backyard, like the photos?
I cannot recall any that I know of in that subdivision being turned in for the homes flooding.
Okay, thank you.
All the comments that we heard at the planning commission was yards, and standing water, and just as the people spoke earlier, there is water standing in the yards.
Okay, thank you.
Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. Jamie, one more.
Oh, sorry. Do it again, Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. During the planning commission meeting, drainage issues was one of the rationales for opposition to this. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if I remember the write-up correctly, the developer made a commitment to a specific set of issues or activities to address those drainage issues. Is that correct?
I believe those that he was talking about was the providing of the hydrology, setting of those finished floors concern, to address, also the detention and provide to staff all those requirements. That was statements made.
And do you think that would be sufficient to address the gentleman's concern who just came up and want to also pass the pictures around? I mean, the issues that they raised, do you think that those set of activities or developments would be sufficient to address those concerns?
The detention ponds are, a lot of his that he brought up were, I believe, drainage issues that are just right at the property transition point. And from looking at the drainage plan and the grading plan that was presented to staff, the developer proposed to put in drainage swales that is more conveying the runoff that's coming from the Saxony Circle area on down. It does not address drainage issues right at that property line. It's more of addressing drainage issues as it affects the lots that were platted.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Wyatt.
One more question for you. Obviously you heard from Saxony Circle tonight, but it's my understanding that the real impacts, or some of the major impacts, are east of Geyer Springs in the Valley Drive area on the east side of Geyer Springs. I think that's where I've heard most of the concerns about water going over Geyer Springs into those subdivisions on the east side of Geyer Springs.
There was concerns raised on the drainage, and that has been historically, as John mentioned, Mr. Honeywell, to the east, that is a mapped flood way and floodplain by FEMA. And as y'all have seen with several developments that come before the board, some of the federal governments, where they stop a floodplain study, is just this is where they stop based upon area and size when they did the study. So there was a concern raised, and that is one of the points that staff addressed with the developer about providing that 100-year analysis through that channel and also setting of the floor. So at some point in time in the future, if it does get mapped, the ones that are adjacent to that hopefully will not be in the floodplain.
Okay.
Director Wyatt would like to talk to the developer.
Hi, good evening. I'm the applicant, Riley Shantz.
Sorry, what is your name?
Riley Shantz.
Riley Shantz.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I have some questions that have been given to me from some of the neighborhood folks that couldn't be here tonight. Now he turned me off.
Use the bathroom. There you go.
Now I'm on. I have some questions to ask that were given to me from some of the residents that could not be here tonight that were concerned about this new piece that you're adding to the project. One of the questions that I have is, what is the name of the street that goes through this subdivision?
I'm not sure of the name. I think it's just gonna Stillman Drive.
Stillman Drive.
Yeah.
Okay, that was confusing to me, so I wanted to know what that was. Okay, and are the homes going to be single family that are
Yes.
in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you plan on any duplexes?
No.
Okay, are they rental or are they owner occupied?
Rental to home ownership.
Rental to home ownership, okay. And what is the purpose of the office and the hours of operation?
I don't believe we have set hours of operation right now yet. But the purpose is just a secondary use for the development to allow tenants for a place to meet other than their homes, and for rental, for a lease-up office for a manager.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
Just a secondary place for tenants to meet, and then a rental office for the manager.
Okay. Is the office planned to be there forever? Do you
Yes.
have, okay, you don't have plans to change it into anything else?
No.
Okay. You talk about this being a community center, and I think there's, what, 4 spaces or 5 spaces in front?
Yeah, I believe so. I think we have 4, and then the ADA handicap spaces
Okay,
as well.
so 5 spaces. And I don't know how many units are in here. There's, what, 70 plus?
No, there's just 44 in this initial phase, so just 44 single-family homes and then 1 community building.
But ultimately, isn't there 70-something homes here?
No, not of right now. Not as right now. Just
Okay.
This plat is just for 44 single-family homes.
Okay, so do you think coming to the community center that they'll walk? Because there's only 5 spaces, and
Yeah, we talked about this in the planning meeting. I think we can utilize street parking as well as those spaces, and it's not very far from the homes right now. So.
okay, well, that's kind of why I got confused as to what the name of the street was, because there's another Stillman Street, and we were concerned about impacting those residents that live there. One of the concerns that I heard was Longley Baptist Church is to the south of there, and, you know, if there was an issue with parking, there was concern that maybe they would be parking in Longley's parking lot and then walking to the community center. It's only, what, 1,770 square feet. So what do you think about
If that's an issue, which I don't believe it will be, we will definitely take care of it. I think we have sufficient parking as well as we can utilize on-street parking for our community center, and that's probably more of a walk because you have to go around that deep ditch because we're actually downstream from the church.
Okay,
So,
is there any fencing plan between the office and Longley's property?
I don't believe so. There's a lot of trees back in there still, and we'll have a landscaping plan as well.
Okay, and the community center, do you plan to apply for an ABC permit or anything like that, any type of that use in the community center?
You'll have to let me know what an ABC permit is.
Arkansas Beverage Control,
No,
alcoholic beverages?
No, we won't.
Okay, so it's strictly for the community. Do you see it as an event center?
We might hold some classes, but it's just for the community. It's just for the 44 homes. So really just any sort of meeting that we feel like can be handled outside of the houses that's easier to access, more beneficial is what it'll be used for.
Okay. Well, that's the end of my questions. Thank you.
If I could just address some of the previous questions, I'd like to. The community building, that's obviously what this is for, is on the southwest side of our property. Mr. Glenn's is in Saxony Circle. We're actually downstream from his house. So the building's not going to affect any drainage in his area. And we've worked with our engineers and as well as Mr. Honeywell and the city engineers, our property's graded so that it drains in the center of the property. So we shouldn't increase any flood in his area. And I bet the drainage currently in that transition period, as Jamie was saying, is probably just because it's unfinished. We don't have any grass. It's all mud. It's been raining a lot. So, and we want to be a good neighbor. We want to be a good neighbor. We'll definitely take care of that. If that's a problem going forward, we obviously have a landscaping plan and a buffer, with grass and trees getting planted. That'll help that a lot too.
Okay.
Director Richardson. Sorry, getting used to this.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's go back to the uses. I think you made reference to meeting space uses for the residents. Will this be available for rental for any kind of social kind of activities like parties, receptions, or are there any limitations in terms of the uses?
If one of the residents wants to come in there and have an event, yes, but it will have rules as far as what we can and can't do.
So there will be an allowable use to have social kind of
it's for the residents. Yeah, absolutely.
And is there a curfew on that? Is there a time you have to have those Does it have to end? I mean, 1 o'clock, 2
We'll,
o'clock,
we'll
3
have
o'clock?
we'll have hours of operation. We'll have closing hours. I don't know what that time will be yet, but we will.
Is that something you do unilaterally? Is that something you do with the community? Is that something that you and your partners would do? Is that something you work with the community on to get their input and feedback?
We'll work with the community on.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm full of questions tonight, aren't I? When you talk about work with the community, are you talking about the community of your home property, home ownership personnel? Are you talking about, for instance, Saxony Circle and that neighborhood up there? I think that's called Allendale. And then we have another neighborhood association across the street. What are your plans in working with that group? Or are you just strictly talking about your local community?
I'm sorry. Yeah, when I talk about events, I'm just our local community right there. But we definitely we want to be a good neighbor. So if there's co-events or something like that that wants to happen, I think that's something we could discuss, and we'd absolutely be for.
One of the concerns about a community center and having events is the hours of operation. So I would think you would pick something that would be early closing.
Yeah.
So that it's not an impact on all the residents, including those outside of your location, loud music, those kinds of things. So anyway, thank you.
Director Richardson.
Yes, Mayor. Last one. Will it be available for rental? My people don't live within that development. Say if I wanted to rent it and have a function there, would I be allowed to do
No,
that? Or do you
it's
have to
just
be a
going to be open
resident?
to our, just
Okay.
our residents.
Thank you.
No problem.
Director Hines.
Call the question.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. We call the question. Any more questions? All those in favor, please. All those in favor? Well, it's actually when you call on the question right now.
Director Wright, I'm sorry, but your question's out of order until you vote on limiting debate.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Parliamentarian. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. It's now been called to question. Any more questions?
She's asked for a clarification on what the vote is, and to vote in favor of the application, you vote yes. To vote against the application, you vote no.
Any more questions? Yes, Madam Clerk.
We need a motion and a second to approve it, though. I mean, to even vote on it.
Right. Yeah. Well, we first have to close the hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Present.
Ayes have it. Mr. Parliamentarian,
The question was about the present vote by Director Richardson and
nay by Vice Mayor Wyrick.
she voted no. But when you have a present, you are supposed to ask in a roll call if the one who voted present wishes to change their vote. You didn't have a roll call. It's okay.
Great. I thought so. Thank you. That's why you're the parliamentarian. All right. We're now moving to citizens communication. We have one card from our friend Russell Raycott.
Mayor and Board, last week there was a meeting at the Northwest Police Precinct, their quarterly meeting, and Captain Heath Helton was complimenting some of his officers and referred to them as hard chargers. I wasn't familiar with that term, so I Googled it, and the first definition that popped up sort of alarmed me. It defined that term as someone who had an aggressive and domineering personality. And Captain Helton had earlier mentioned that his officers had constructive contact with citizens. To me, it seemed kind of incongruent that hard chargers could have constructive contact. They're more likely to have the kind of contact that Director Richardson described in his crisis and community meeting held back in 2017. That's patrol and control. And I had concern because I had sent an FOI request to Little Rock Police regarding all officers suspended or fired in 2018. And I'd received it last week and hadn't reviewed it. But after the meeting, I found that there were 8 officers from the Northwest Precinct that had been involved in violation of LRPD rules and regulations, general orders, and state and federal laws. One officer has been suspended and fired and charged with a criminal violation of assault. Another officer was suspended because he failed to properly search a suspect, and when that suspect was taken to the Pulaski County Detention Center, detention officers found a handgun on that person. There was another officer who was suspended for carrying an unauthorized secondary handgun, and I've sort of speculated, is that unauthorized handgun what is commonly called a drop gun? There was another officer who hog-tied an individual, and she was suspended. Of course, hog-tying the individual can cause some asphyxia. I think that's the term, Doctor. There was another officer who was suspended for destroying evidence, something he had previously been suspended for, and he made sexually inappropriate comments to a rookie female officer that he was assigned to train. There was another officer that was suspended for an incident where she had damaged her police car, and that's the same officer who was involved in that drifting in the parking lot that video made circulation at the end of the year. And there was another officer who fell asleep while driving a half a mile from that Northwest Precinct and hit another car, rear-ended him. And that was his 4th accident involving a police vehicle. It's time that we have a citizens review committee that's established to look at these officers and the complaints and things that happen to the police department and make recommendations to the board, to the mayor, city manager of how to handle that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Director. All right. Director Hines.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm passing out a resolution that I'm going to ask to be placed on our next agenda. I worked with Tom on this. This is a resolution to declare compliance with the City of Little Rock, Arkansas request from federal government to stem illegal immigration for other purposes. What this is saying, pass that so that Tom and Bruce have it. Basically, this resolution recognizes what we've already agreed to accept federal funds. I have it on good authority that we may see a move to preempt us at the state level, and this is an affirmative action that I'm going to ask my fellow board members to give their input. It's a very simple resolution. It recognizes what we've already done as far as requirements. It's also an affirmative in that when you look at Section 1, it says the city will not engage in any program or activity which would require a failure to cooperate to the extent provided by law with any appropriate federal agency that needs to obtain information about citizenship or immigration status of a person in the custody of the city. And the second is also a protection for those individuals in the city. It says the city will not engage in any program activity which violates an individual's statutory or constitutional rights in order to cooperate with any federal agency that needs to obtain information about citizenship, immigration status of a person in the custody of the city. So this basically recognizes what we've already agreed to accept federal funds as a resolution by the city. So I'm asking that this be put on our next agenda. I'm welcome to any input or changes that you might suggest. I'll work with anybody on the board that over the next 2 weeks to look at this.
Well, Director Hines, first, before I give the gavel, or not give the gavel, give the next voice you'll hear is Director Hendricks, but for Mr. Parliamentarian, in an effort to make certain that we aren't creating anything that's redundant as it relates to what's already on the books, could you speak to that? If this is something that's already on the books, why would we need another resolution to state what we already are doing?
Mayor Scott, I don't think it's redundant to anything that we have on the books. There are certain federal grant programs that the city has benefited from, and particularly certain grant programs from the Department of Justice on behalf of the police department require that we put these things in place. Some cities around the country have basically taken a hands-off attitude towards the federal government in terms of dealing with persons who have been arrested, being made available to federal officers if there's a request from the federal government to do so. That's not done here.
And Mr. Parliamentarian, I would think just to make certain that we're all aware of what this ordinance is, I think we always have to make certain that fellow members of the board understand exactly what we are voting on. So we would love to have a legal analysis of what we already have on books and what this may or may not change as we move forward. Mr. Manager, you have any comments?
One more to clarify, and then we'll work with Tom. But Dr. Hines, is this to be on the next board meeting agenda? Is
Yes,
that
correct.
February
Per our
Right, okay.
our guidelines that any director can bring forward a resolution or ordinance to be set at the next meeting. And this is a recognition by this body, the board of directors, as to what our responsibilities are with those, and is an outward expression of our intention to comply with those.
Director Hendricks.
Of course, thank you. Of course, we've had a discussion, but I wanted to ask if this had been presented to our new mayor prior to bringing it to me. No, Mayor. I resent that. Thank you.
Director Wright.
Did I make myself clear? He's a new. This is our new mayor. You and I get along, and I would wish that things like this is put before our mayor first. Unless you all are really hear a lot from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hendricks. Director Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week or week before, I believe, I've slept since then, I requested some information regarding LRCV and our shopping center out in West Central, and I wanted to get some information, and I do have that information. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for that. However, I noted, which pretty much was what I was thinking, we are lumped in, the shopping areas and all that are lumped into Midtown. Well, Mayor, that basically makes us disappear because we're not considered Midtown. I would like permission to sit down with LRCV to have a discussion to explore the possibility of developing an identity within their promotions, just to explore to see if it's possible. Okay, because when you look at this, they highlight certain neighborhoods for you to go to. We're just lumped in there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just to explore, to have a conversation, to see if we can't develop some type of identity. We have sports, we have shopping, we have eateries.
I don't see an issue with that at all.
Okay, so.
And as you know, that myself and Director Fortson are both on that board, and we'll take any issues that you bring up and make certain that you have a meeting with the CEO and or the Senior Vice President for Marketing Communications.
So can I contact your staff and ask to set up a meeting?
Yes,
to
ma'am.
go in and just present some things, and I'll talk to some of my shopping center people, but I've already heard from them, and they feel like they don't get any representation out of the money that they pay in the tax. So I wanted to make sure that I explored every opportunity to help them.
We want you to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I need to ask Tom for a clarification going back to the previous subject. And I just...
Would you mind sharing the previous subject so everyone's clear?
Yes, the resolution. And I'm not sure that, I just want to make sure I understand what you said. You said some cities take a hands-off approach, and then a moment or so later you said that's not done here. And I wanted to know if the "that's not done here" referred to the some cities take a hands-off approach.
I used to have that problem with Miss Bookout and Miss Count in English in high school. I apologize for that. The city of Little Rock, Pulaski County, recognize constitutional rights of persons that they have in custody, but they also recognize the interrelationships with other departments. So we have not kept federal agencies from being able to come into contact with somebody if they wish to do so. There have been cities where the local police departments or local sheriff's offices have actually not allowed federal agents to contact and try to speak with an individual in custody, usually on immigration issues, and that's created a tension throughout the country, and has also led to some modifications of the various grant proposals and requirements that local governments have to meet.
Thank you. If I could ask a follow-up
Yes, ma'am.
on that. I mean, I know in previous years, at some points, we've had a resolution or I think a resolution that was that said we were a welcoming city.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
I know, and so would this resolution have a negative impact on the welcoming city resolutions going forward? And would this preclude any resolution if someone so chose to make Little Rock a sanctuary city?
In terms of being a welcoming city, I don't see a conflict because we're going to welcome people, but implicit within that is who are law-abiding. In terms of being in conflict with a future action to become a sanctuary city, I have to first tell you that there is no definition of a sanctuary city, and there have been attempts by courts and agencies to say what it means, but it just kind of keeps changing. So I don't want to say that a future resolution about Little Rock becoming a sanctuary city would be in conflict with this until I could see a definition of sanctuary city. If it means, to answer your question more fully, if it means that we're not going to cooperate with the federal government, we're not going to share information with federal law enforcement, yes, it would be in conflict with that.
And I don't have any information that there was going to be one. I just wanted to get your input on whether or not it could be in conflict. Thank you.
Did I dangle any participles? That's my real question.
I do not think you did.
And before I give the mic to Director Richardson, yes, ma'am. And before I give the mic to Director Richardson and then Director Hendricks, just a question for Director Hines. You referenced you have on good authority that there will be a legislation to preempt, and the question is to preempt what? There you go.
To preempt us from not complying with federal law that we've agreed to through our ordinances and through our agreements with the federal government and the Justice Department.
Well, I can share with you as a mayor that uphold an oath of office to abide by the U.S. Constitution as well as the Arkansas State Constitution. That won't ever be an issue, and this does look like a solution in search of a problem.
It may be that, but I wish that to be an expression of this body that we plan to comply with the federal laws that we've agreed to, and that's why I brought this resolution forward.
Thank you. Director Hendricks.
I received a note from Central Arkansas Water, and as our mayor, this has Stoler's name on it, and I want to leave this with you to see if that should be corrected, because I don't want to receive anything other than mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of people will sit up here and I don't swallow a lot of junk, and I hope that you'll get accustomed to me saying what's on.
We want you to always be transparent as you always have been.
Yes, Don. Thank you.
Mr. Manager, could you please explain, I know that came up in one of our meetings today, the third-party letter that's gone, just kind of give a brief history about that, because I know a lot of people have received that letter.
Yeah.
Just so, I know we communicated about it before.
This is on the water line?
Yes, sir.
The board passed a resolution last year, I can't remember, but maybe mid-part of the year, to basically say we would enter into an agreement with the National League of Cities regarding a water line agreement that citizens can work with a third party to directly set up a contract with. The city, as the board would remember, would get an initial allocation of somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 one-time money, and then going forward, we get a certain percentage of the number of residents that had signed up. So, Mr. Carpenter is reviewing the agreement that was signed by the previous mayor regarding how it's been advertised. A lot of people see the LR on the envelope, and I think it came directly from the city, and that's not the case. But Tom is reviewing the agreement.
Thank you so much. Director Richardson?
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, is it necessary, if Lance said it's something we already agreed to, is it necessary for us to pass this resolution? And if so, back to what Director Webb was saying a minute ago, didn't we pass a resolution last year that said Little Rock was going to be a city of compassion? And we did, and if so, is there any kind of mixed messages? Is there any kind of conflict? We've already agreed to, I think Lance made several references to something we've already agreed to, so we've already agreed to it. It's something that we need. And is it in stark contrast to our City of Compassion resolution?
Director Richardson, I don't see a problem with the City of Compassion resolution. And as to your second question, whether it's necessary, let me put it this way. I don't see it as being an illegal resolution. Whether it's necessary or not is a political question.
Well, I got you on that. Illegal, I mean, legal may not be the right thing to do sometimes. Remember, slavery was legal one time. Segregation was legal one time. May not be the right thing to do. So, and to Doris's point, with respect to the description and geographical boundaries of Midtown, since I've been on this board, it's moved further and further west as Little Rock has developed further and further west. I don't know who's in charge of the branding of it, who's in charge of the geographical description of it, because a lot of times funding, whether it's grant funding, federal funding, even development funding, economic development funding, is tied to the branding of a particular area in our community. So I don't know who's in charge of that, Bruce, but since I've been on this board, Midtown has gone further and further west. And I think with that creates the opportunity for funding to go further west, which is going to contribute to the blight in the inner part of our city. So who makes that decision?
Mr. Manager.
You know, that's interesting. We did an analysis maybe a year and a half ago to see where really is the center of the city, and it really is right there on University, very close to Boyle Park. I mean, so I know we talk, and part of the other issue that has happened is the census as we redraw the boundaries, but really the heart of the city is right there at Boyle Park almost.
Well, I know right at with the patrols and the precincts of our patrol of our police department, they all meet right there in University and Asher. I mean, I think that's a center point, Bruce, with respect to the patrols and divisions of our policing. I believe, looking at some of the stuff you guys talked about a few years ago, that if we looked at the center point of all our different precincts, University and Asher was right in the middle of our city.
That's correct. I mean, you have Northwest, and then you have the 12th Street area that really is right there at Asher and Colonel Glenn and University.
Thank you, sir. Move to adjourn.
Yeah, have other lights.
Trying to get out of here.
I understand. You know, I like the efficient meeting. Director Wright will be next, Director Hendricks, and then hopefully finally Director Fortson.
I'll be brief, but to piggyback on what Ken was just saying about the branding, we have branded ourselves. We are West Central Little Rock, and UALR did a study which was commissioned for us, and it did identify us as more West Central, and that Midtown was supposed to stop at 6:30, and everything on the other side was West Central. And that has kept moving and moving and moving, and that's what I'm trying to stop, because it will have an effect, and it does have an effect on funding and where you are designated in the city of Little Rock. You are rated based upon your identity, and if you don't have one, somebody's going to tell you who you are, and I don't roll like that. So that's on the branding issue. The second issue is on the NLC. The board approved this program for water lines. We also approved the free prescription drug cards. I have not seen any rollout on that. I would like for us to move forward with that. It's a free prescription drug card that goes to citizens that do not have insurance and are not city employees. And it is a free service that we pay for because we are a member city in the National League of Cities. And I would like to see us roll something out with regards to that.
Mr. Manager.
I got an update on that last week, and we're expecting the information any day now to come in, and then we'll have to roll it out, the cards and where people, so we'll have a rollout.
I'd like some kind of announcement, some
Right.
PR on it. Thank you.
All right, Director Hendricks.
Glad to see that my state representative, Charles Blake, is here. And I really want people to take a look at Sunday's paper, January 20th, where it says accountability part 2, and it speaks of Mayor Frank Scott is right to do it now in the first 100 days. The people of Little Rock have long wanted a strong mayor. Frank Scott is in a position to take advantage of that ordinance without the issue of race hanging over the whole debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hendricks. Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Back to the ordinance. I'm sorry, resolution. I'm sorry. Apologize. I'd like to have a definition of status of a person in custody of the city. I'd like to have a definition as to what that means and what situation might a person might be if they're in custody of the city. We do a lot of outreach, and if we're doing a program for Hispanics, does that mean they're in the custody of the city? You can write me later, but I'd just like that clarified. That kind of bothers me a little bit. The other thing, Mr. Carpenter, do you know where we are with the Silver Sneakers and Silver Fit program coming to our community center or our Jim Daly Center?
I don't see Mr. Eckert here tonight, but I think that contract has everybody signed off on it. I know that there are 2 silver sneaker contracts because I thought
Silver Fit, Silver Sneaker.
Yeah, and I know that one of them had been done earlier, which I thought was the one you were asking about, and it wasn't. But then I said, finish this, and my understanding is that's been done, but I will find out and let you know.
Well, my last word on it was it gone to whoever the organization is, whatever insurance company that was, but we hadn't gotten it back, and so I was asking for an update. If we've gotten it back and if we're ready to move on it, that's important to increasing our traffic at Jim Daly for sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, Director Fortson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session to consider personnel matter.
Second. All those in favor, motion to move into executive session. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Now into executive session. Now coming back to order from our executive session. The report from the executive session is no action. There's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved and probably second that we move to adjournment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Adjourn.